Danke, Frau Vorsitzende, sehr geehrte Damen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I will try and be as brief as possible. The Commission and the European Investment Bank in 2006 together set up the JASPERS joint initiative. The intention was to make sure that member states that joined the European Union in 2004 or later would be provided with assistance in setting up large projects. From an economic point of view, JASPERS is very important. Between 2006 and 2016, JASPERS concluded more than 700 large contracts for large projects. And its importance can also be seen in the amount of money that has been dispersed, 78 billion euro, and the EU accounted for 46 billion euro of that. The European Investment Bank also supports JASPERS projects to the tune of 10 billion euro in loans, and this for the two periods that we are looking at. If we look at the institutional setup of JASPERS and the planning, then the main objectives of the initiative and the competences of the initiative were not clearly defined. There were no agreements between the EIB and the Commission as to how things would work. And we didn't really understand why the initiative was then continued for the period 2007 to 2013. We felt that the JASPERS support wasn't sufficiently targeted to be of aid to the member states, and there was also a risk that there would be a lack of impartiality for the period 2014 to 2020, and there were actions taken to mitigate that high risk by having the independent quality review in relation to the JASPERS advisory function. It was also suggested that there would be more control over the strategic planning of JASPERS, and milestones and criteria should also be developed to phase out JASPERS once it has achieved its main targets. Now, if you look at the large projects that we looked into, then JASPERS did lead to projects being approved more quickly. So there was better project documentation and quicker approval by the Commission. There was also an impact on the costs that were planned, but there was little or almost no influence from JASPERS on the results, the size and the implementation time of the projects. In our view, JASPERS also doesn't have a bearing on take-up of EU funds, because there was a delay with all of the projects that we looked at. If you then look at member states' administrative capacity, then the impact there has not led to a higher degree of independence on the part of member states from JASPER assistance. So the recommendations basically are that the target for JASPER's assistance should be according to a project's stage of development and maintain its focus on advice for major projects, because that's where the most results are to be expected. It's also important to adjust the role, nature and intensity of capacity building activities in member states and provide incentives for member states so that they can reduce their dependence on JASPER assistance. Could I also point you to the areas of monitoring and evaluation? The European Court of Auditors has found some shortcomings regarding the JASPERS activities for the planning, the monitoring and evaluation. In the case of planning, often overly optimistic prognoses or forecasts were made in relation to large projects. And between 2014 and 2016, there was this increase in staff numbers, but a reduction in concluded projects. When it comes to monitoring, there were weaknesses in terms of JASPERS efficiency and effectiveness. There was no reliable data about inputs and no information on JASPERS real costs. And the European Investment Bank wasn't happy to pass on those data. And in spite of our best efforts in the Court of Auditors, we couldn't determine whether the contribution from the EIB was offset or not, because of course they had their own loans that they granted too. Turning now to the recommendations that we have adopted. First of all, we suggest that there be the introduction of a comprehensive system for monitoring the extent to which JASPERS objectives have been met, and we also suggest optimizing JASPERS efficiency and effectiveness by ensuring that the actual costs are monitored reliably and make sure that they are compared against outputs and results. In closing, Madam Chair, please also allow me to state that our 12 recommendations have been accepted by the Commission in full, and 3 recommendations were accepted in part. So there is a lot of support from the European Commission for these issues. Thank you.